talent approved?
Yeah.
Ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
Who is in charge of our schedule these days? We need to talk to them because
I know. It sounds like me, but...
Yeah, no, it's me too.
Exactly. I feel like
Hello,
I'm working too hard.
We all are. This is Lawrence Lewis.
And this is Sister Christian.
Today is Thursday, March 21st. This is the Producer's Happy Hour, a daily podcast with two producers on opposite coasts, reaching out to our filmmaking community because we still are trying to figure out what's happening with this pandemic. How is it affecting you and your life and your work?
Your stories let us know that we're not alone. It's important for us to keep sharing our experiences and ideas.
So email us, or better yet, record a 1 to 2 minute voice memo. You can do it right on your smartphone and send that to producershappyhour@gmail.com. Just follow the instructions on our website, producershappyhour.com.
And please share this show with your mother-in-law, all your friends, your work colleagues. We want these stories to be heard. They're human, and we strongly feel that we need to be here for each other.
We do. And there's a lot going on. But you know what we're going to do today, Christian, since we're getting a little bit busy, right?
Yes.
We're going to jump into our little time machine. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning of the year before any of this happened.
Yes, this is pre-COVID. We were brand new podcasting, and we were on the hunt for what it means to be a good producer.
Yeah, so we're going to go all the way back to what was going to be episode 2. The guest on that show was Emily Plunket Fleischer, who we actually had back on a post-COVID episode. She taught us to put away even our computer cable and wipe down our workstation.
Yes.
But Emily, she's been an industry professional for years. She worked her way from PA to producer and worked with some of the biggest names in the business.
And now she's in-house at Verizon using those skills in their production department. And we get some valuable insight into that world.
Yes. And it's funny, you get to listen to how the show originally was going to be made, which is very different than
it's definitely got a different tone.
It has a different tone, and we also were brand new. We didn't know what we were doing, but we were trying to make something cool and fun. And then, of course, the whole world went to a handbasket. But Christian, before we jump in, we probably should chat a little bit about the fact that Gavin Newsom yesterday held a YouTube town hall in which he said that the state will issue guidelines next Monday that would allow film and television production to start up in some counties in the state, perhaps even as soon as next week. However, Los Angeles County continues to represent one of the largest shares of cases, so LA County might not be part of this plan, but at least he's coming out with a plan. Variety has an article about it. I'll put it in the show notes, but also IndieWire, just earlier this morning, they released some notes of this 30-page document that they got in their hands.
Cliff notes.
A little Cliff Notes. So I haven't had time to read it yet. We just hopped on right when I got it, but that's on IndieWire. It's called Hollywood Safety White Paper, Film, TV, Back to Work. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. It looks like some stuff's happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's welcome news for a lot of people, and we'll just have to dissect it and see what it really means. I do like all the discussions because it'll get us ready to go. Exactly, and this white paper was constructed with representatives from all the major guilds, IATSE, DGA, SAG-AFTRA, and the studios via the Association of Movie Producers and TV Producers. So this is what we've been hoping for, Christian. This is kind of an industry-wide labor management safety task force. I'm going to dive right in the moment that I can, for sure. Yeah, when we have a break in our day. Exactly. And because this show was recorded a while ago, the credits might be a little different, so we want to make sure you all know that this show was edited and co-produced by Rob Blumke. Artwork and logo design by Christopher Daniels. And our music was composed by Kyle Puccia. All right, let's jump on back to January 2020 and let's take a listen. You go ahead. You're the expert. Yeah.
Episode 2.
How's it?
Sound great?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Christian. Welcome to the Producer's Happy Hour, the podcast where two seasoned producers on opposite coasts have an honest discussion over drinks about what it means to be a good producer. It's more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's more than just hiring crew and renting gear. Join us on our continuing search for greater learning with host Sister Christian in New York and Lawrence T. Lewis in Los Angeles. Hey, Christian.
We're back for episode 2, and you're still in New York.
I'm still
what
in
a
New
treat.
York. It's a treat because we get to sit and have drinks together in person, face to face, while chatting about our jobs.
Exactly, but only the positive thing.
And I'm in New York because I just wrapped a doozy of a job.
Was it experiential?
It was experiential. Seems to be what I do the most of now.
Yes.
But it was fun. It was for Klarna, which is a Swedish bank that is actually a shopping app where you can purchase items from big luxury stores, and it goes on a payment plan with no interest, no additional fees.
What?
Yeah.
That sounds like game changing.
It is game changing. And they're a really crazy brand that has a really strong identity, and it's Swedish. So it's a little bit kooky.
Are they
and fun.
cool?
They're cool. They're uber cool.
Yeah.
And we did a pop-up dog group. Well, they called it a pop-up dog grooming salon here in New York City, where dog and dog owner got a little mini makeover to look more like each other for Halloween.
How fun was that?
It was so much fun. I mean, 3 days of being surrounded by cute dogs. I mean, you can't go wrong.
How can you go wrong, especially in New York City?
Yeah.
There's a ton of cute dogs.
You just wrapped something too.
It was huge.
Can you talk about it?
Well, suffice it to say that I filmed 3 weddings in one day for a commercial that will be out soon. Logistically, it was large to try to find a venue in New York City.
Yeah.
That offered 3 different looks for a wedding.
Wow.
I know.
Where did you shoot?
We wound up being on Staten Island. And those of you who currently work and live in the New York area understand what a big stretch it was for us to go to Staten Island.
Wow.
Yes. It went off without a hitch. It was a very good job. Yes.
I'm glad.
3 brides, 3 weddings, all done.
Sounds ideal. Christian, what are you drinking today?
Today I'm having a rosé, sparkling, of course, very dry. It's delicious.
I myself am having an IPA.
Oh,
yeah.
That's kind of your go-to.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
I've resisted for a long time, but now I like IPAs. What can I say?
Okay, well, it's time to get on with the episode. But just a reminder for people who missed episode 1, this show is about us going on a journey to find out what it takes and what it means to be a good producer.
Right. And this week we have a special guest, Emily Plunket Fleischer. She's amazing. Her interview is great. I can't wait for everyone to hear it. She worked her way up from PA to producer and has worked with some of the biggest names in the business.
Huge.
Big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you do commercials, you know who we're talking about.
She's no joke.
Exactly. And now she's in-house at Verizon using those skills as a production consultant, and will share some valuable insight into her world.
Yes.
I mean, I can't tell you how good the information is, because it just, coming from doing this for as long as we have, you think that you may, slip into knowing everything. Nope.
No. We learned, and that's what we're here to do.
Exactly. That's what we're here to do.
Christian, it's time for some crew shout outs.
Yes.
Who's your crew shout out?
I'm very excited. So a few months ago, I had a job where we had gone into the weekend after the AC prepped 2 cameras, and I got a call at 11 a.m. on Saturday morning that the director asked to add a 3rd camera and a 3D rig so that we could shoot 2 focal lengths at the same time.
Oh.
Yes. And we were filming on Sunday with a very big celebrity. So we had from 11 a.m. on Saturday morning until Sunday morning to find a 3rd camera in a very busy New York. And I can tell you that Sarah Curlin at TCS really pulled through for us.
Wow.
She opened early. She had her technician come in. They pulled out all the stops to make it happen. And I really appreciate that.
That is awesome.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. And that's the kind of magic that happens when you've got this network of people that always have your back, because things like this come up, things like this happen. And if you treat people well and you've got good relationships, you can kind of solve almost any problem.
Yes. After speaking to the director and going through exactly why he needed it, in the end, he still wanted it, and you have to make it happen. So yes, relationships that have been built often pay off.
Well, cheers to Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
My shout out is to an amazing production designer here in New York City. Her name is Susan Linz.
I love her.
You've worked with her.
We'd met a long time ago, but reintroduced me
Right.
to her.
And like I said, she was my production designer on the Klarna pop-up salon that we had in the meatpacking district here in New York City. And she is just such a solid, talented woman with so much taste. And that's what this job needed, because I saw the images coming in from the director and from the ad agency, the references of what they wanted to put together. Instantly, I knew it was a Susan job, because that's her taste level. That is what she does and what she can put together in the time frame that we had. Her name written all over it. And she put together the most beautiful, I don't know what to call it, set, pet store, salon. It was phenomenal experience. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing with experiential. It's not a set. You're not building a set. You're building a world, because your people are in it. They're sitting in it. They're touching it. They're using things in it. A lot of different considerations go into building an experiential arena. Mm-hmm. And Susan has that experience and went above and beyond on this job. And
that's fantastic.
So cheers to Susan Linz.
Cheers to Susan. To segue slightly into art department, mm-hmm. It is occasionally we struggle with finding somebody perfect for the job.
Yeah.
Always open to suggestions.
Always.
Please email us.
Yes. Please send us your crew suggestions. We'd love to hear them.
Good, solid art department.
Yes.
That would be lovely.
And we're going to put Sarah at TCS and Susan Lynn's information in our show notes in case anybody ever needs to get in touch with them.
Yes, please reach out.
Hey, Christian.
Hey, Lawrence.
Do you know what time it is?
I do.
It is time for tip of the day.
I know. I love this part. And I can tell you why, because I have learned so much over the years, and it comes from experience. This one's a big one that I would love to pass on to you guys.
Please.
So I was a solid PM at the time, really cranking out those union jobs, and I was on a tech scout, and we went through it. Then came the shoot day, and the VTR person turned to me and said, Christian, it would have been good to know that we were shooting in a 2-floor walk-up building.
Oh.
Yes. And I realized that as the first AD did not tell him.
Right.
Locations, which we had both, did not tell him, that it had fallen on me. I'm the one who's going to hear it.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And so communication is important here, because you realize that your sound person and your VTR person and your first AC do not come on the tech scout.
Right.
So any information that you can be thinking of during your tech scout to pass along to them is important. It only helps them do their job better for you.
Yes, exactly.
Communication.
And you can't just assume that the information is going to get disseminated, because like you said, it could have been the first AD, it could have been your production manager, it could have been your location manager. But in the end, the buck stops with you.
Because you're the one that pays them.
Right. And so following up on all those little details and making sure that information is communicated is
vital.
It's vital.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Good tip. Well, mine is also about communication, which I think is the topic of the show.
Do tell.
Is following up in writing. Always. After you have a long conversation with somebody, follow up in writing.
Working out issues.
And especially for producer when you're dealing with an ad agency, that's the most important time to follow up in writing. But there's other times when that comes into play too, whether it's you're talking to a vendor or your stylist or your production designer. Conversations can get lost, detail can get lost, and also, it just serves you well to have that written document to say, here, not to call anyone out, but just to back up what you said, put it on paper, and it also helps give people an executable list or a task list.
Exactly.
So I find that to be really helpful, and it really kind of closes the loop on a lot of loose ends.
Exactly. I think that once you've worked out a solution to a problem too, just to recap, to make sure that your understanding of the solution matches their understanding of the solution, because unfortunately I've had that happen as well.
Yeah. You talk something out, you think you guys are on the same page,
I mean, that happens in life.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
but you're not necessarily. So to
Right.
follow up with written language
exactly.
can help stop any of those miscommunications from happening.
Exactly. Communication.
Great. Good tips.
Good tips. Pro tips.
All right. So as you may have guessed, today's topic is about communication and why being a good communicator is imperative to being a good producer.
Yes. And we talk about that a lot with our interview with Emily. She really demonstrates how important it is. And having an open, honest environment with your crew, they trust you.
Right.
And you have hired them to do their job as the key to their department or as the expert in their field. And if you don't trust them or communicate with them, it's only to your own detriment as a producer.
Exactly.
Mhm.
You have to trust the experts that you have hired.
Yes.
Surround yourself with smart people and let them do their jobs. Doesn't mean let go of the ship, but
No. But it also means that you don't have to micromanage.
Exactly,
And if you've
right.
provided your team with appropriate information, they will be able to take that and do their job properly.
So let's get on with the interview.
Yes.
Okay. Emily Plunket Fleischer joined Verizon in 2017 as manager of broadcast production on their marketing and advertising sourcing team. Prior to joining Verizon, she was an accomplished and energetic producer of commercials and web-based content for over 20 years.
As a woman previously working in the production community and now on the client side using her years of experience, she is inspired to teach and mentor people as she believes that his continued growth and learning is a must. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So we just want to start. If you can just tell us a little bit about where you are today, what you're doing career-wise, and a little bit about the journey of how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So at this point, I'm on staff, as they say, at Verizon as a broadcast production consultant. I'm also called a subject matter expert, which is kind of appropriate since I've been doing this. I've been in production for over 20 years. What I basically do is I support marketing. We do a lot of work, production work here at Verizon, and I support marketing with making good decisions, help them save money, but also come from a place of knowledge when they're making decisions. So that's where I am. It's a great job.
So give us an overview of like your day to day. What do you do on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, I work with our different agency partners because we have a number of them on the different accounts, on wireless, on Fios, on Visible.
You have so many.
We have a lot of different products. And I work with all the marketing people and the agency partners, McCann and everybody else. And I consider myself a liaison between the two of them. So I call it my just so you know conversations with the agencies where so just so I know, this is what I know. And I find out what's going on because jobs pivot and change all the time. And I keep up to date with all the jobs. And then I look at all the budgets. I don't beat people up about PAs, but I do look at them and I say, I'm not going to spend $7,500 a day on a camera, give me a break.
Right.
And we're going to spend $4,500 a day or whatever it is. It's just using my knowledge of it. And I look at the bids, I look at overages. We collect data so that, in the future, we can come up with different ways of doing it, smarter ways of doing it. And also, like, for example, today I put together a presentation that I'm presenting to the marketing teams on the 18th coming up on diversity and inclusion and bringing in Made in New York and streetlights and ecosets to teach them about diversity, inclusion, sustainability, and trying to put it in as a mandate for all of with our agency partners that on every job a PA from streetlights or New York or Made in New York is hired and that ecosets is used.
Yeah. That's great. I just did a job for Biscuit, and what they're putting into their budgets, they're taking it upon themselves to put in a little bit of carbon offsetting in their budgets by having production put in the bid costs of, planting a tree in whatever area we're shooting in or doing something to that effect. That's a great idea. So yeah, it's great to hear that Verizon is kind of making that a part of their platform as well.
Yeah, it's something that I don't know, I taught at Made in New York taught a training class years ago, and I don't know, I'm passionate about mentoring and teaching people. So I'm excited about it.
No, I think anytime we are in a position to hire outside of what used to be the norm, and when you can hire women or people of color, I think it's important that you consider it.
Exactly. And I also think that it's really important to, and this is what I've always sort of based my producing who I am, mentoring. It's always about teaching and mentoring, and it's not about being competitive. And it's about helping the next generation know what to do and how to do it properly and teaching them,
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. Teaching
That's
them.
what this podcast is all about.
That's why we got along so well.
Exactly. It's like everyone's like
Yeah.
all about the free to bid, but unless you train people, women to be directors, who are you doing?
How do they know they can?
I know. So, so that's that. That's me. That's what I'm doing today.
That's great.
And talking to you.
And talking to us, which we appreciate. Same for us, though. We also feel that, we need to continue learning as producers in order to grow with the changing landscape of this crazy business we do.
Exactly.
So now you're on the client side,
I
right? So you're
am.
at Verizon, but you still interact with producers. I'm assuming mostly agency producers?
Mostly my agency partners I'm dealing with. But because I do come from such a strong production background, like for example, I was on a set on Friday, and I know the AD, the hair and makeup person, the producer, the PAs. They're like, so it's really good. And then also some of the production companies do feel comfortable enough with me after 2 years to approach me a little bit on the side and say, how are we going to make this work? We're between a rock and a hard place. And I try to come up with solutions, just knowing maybe some inside information or something.
So your vast amounts of knowledge, you're using that to help agency producers and agency partners execute what they need to execute with these newfangled budgets we're getting, and
exactly
and all the new different types of media that we're producing. And so you're kind of helping guide them through the process. Is that right?
That is exactly it. And it's also at the same time I'm trying to teach myself this process, because when your deliverables, you have 26 deliverables for a 30-second spot, because it's not just broadcast anymore. It's Snapchat, it's Hulu, it's YouTube, it's Facebook, and that's a lot. And what's the ratio factor there? And I don't know. I just feel like you can always learn. There's always something more to learn. You might not be proficient in loading a camera anymore. Remember the old or a projector, but
oh yeah.
But you need to become proficient in what the different ratio factors that you're going to need for deliverables. So
exactly,
and that'll change tomorrow again. And
it will. Like pre-rolls are the new thing. Instagram stories,
Exactly. Going to I went to NAB here in New York recently just because I was like, well, I don't have to travel to Vegas, but I'll just go over there. I want to see what the new camera is or any new technology was, because I don't like to not know what it is. I like to know. So
no, it's important.
Yeah, I think it makes you better at your job.
So let's take your current job out of the mix. And so say when you were still making your way up the chain, when would you feel most supported by your producer?
When they communicated.
Right.
And you felt like there was an open communication and you could go to them and not fear of repercussion for a mistake, or, because we all make mistakes and that's how you learn. But when I could go to them and say, oh my God, all hell just broke loose. What am I going to do? And be supported. Be like, all right, let's
trust.
Go. Right, exactly. And a person, I've always been a solution-driven person, not a problem-driven person. So I always responded to that person, to that producer who was the producer or who was a solution-driven person.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can honestly remember the first time I decided not to work for somebody because the communication just wasn't there.
Oh yeah.
Which was important to me. And then it also taught me to communicate better with my team below me.
Exactly.
And every crew member.
Yes.
Like, hey, VTR guy, guess what? We're a second floor walk up.
Yeah, exactly.
So I remember I would have brought the comment was, I would have brought my son if I knew this. I didn't go on the tech scout.
Yeah. Or, we're shooting at night. Wouldn't that have been nice to know somebody put you on hold? It's just communication. I think those are the best producers. And the worst ones are the ones that leave skid marks all over your body. But
I think we've all been there.
yeah, exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
you were a producer for many years to
Hmm.
some really big name directors, right? Do you want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that part of your career?
Oh, I loved producing. I mean, I felt like, I mean, I think Christian knows this innately. I'm kind of a mother. That's sort of a role I love. And I always felt like, you know, by being a producer, and it was, you were solving problems, because that's what it is, finding that solution, solving the problem, taking care of everybody, making sure everybody was good. And I loved it. I loved it. The bigger the job, the better. But I even loved the little jobs that were like, that you could really get your hands dirty, though I didn't love carrying ups and up flights of stairs or hauling it onto a truck where you're like, I've done this. But
I'm past this, but you're
I'm
never
not,
really past it as a
you're
producer.
never,
You
no,
never.
you always get your hands dirty. But I love doing those jobs. And I mean, it was great because when I first started producing and being in this business, even, I was a big union commercial gal. I did big jobs and in New York, and I
Mm-hmm.
was a New York gal, and I loved it. And then that work sort of changed, and it went
Yeah.
non-union, and it was
Hmm.
morphing and reinventing yourself and working with sometimes not such great directors, or a junior or not
Right.
experienced. Like I
Somebody
always
who needs your guidance.
exactly, which I felt like was great, and if they were open to it, terrific. If they weren't, it'd be like a little frustrating. But I don't know. I think it was always great to make something. At the end of the day, when you went home, you felt like you were part of the process, and that you did something. You didn't just move something from point A to point B. You were all every day. It was always the same formula. Every job's the same in a way, but every job's different. You know what I
Right.
mean? So that,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And when you were producing, from what I've learned about you prepping for the show, you produced for some really big names like Marcus
Mark,
Nispel,
yeah. And then
and
I did, and then I did a whole bunch of stuff for Victoria's Secret, which was always fun. And then
uh-huh.
what else did I do? I can't remember what I did anymore, Christian Kendrick.
I mean, I can't even remember what I had for breakfast.
I know,
So
I know.
right?
Did I?
I had a piece of
I
rye
can't remember
toast.
what I did about half an hour ago. I don't know what you guys are talking about. You're
But
one ahead of me.
so this was, and I hate saying the phrase back in the day, but this was
Yeah,
a
back in the
moment
day.
when commercial production had
At the height.
big
At the
personalities, big
Mhm.
directors, big fat budgets to work with, and you were
exactly.
doing big, complicated shoots.
Oh yeah,
500-page rap
Yeah.
books.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Bringing a plane in, the fuselage into, Silver Cup from LA, and then
Hmm.
being in the middle of Times Square with James Gandolfini for American Airlines. I mean, that's fun. That's fun.
I remember that job.
Remember that job? That was some fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
remember that
that
job.
was a great
Yeah.
job. That was a great
Yeah.
job. And
That was money.
that was some cash. That was some real cash. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, those were awesome jobs because and everyone thought it was so glamorous, and it wasn't really that glamorous. But it was. I loved the
Right.
people I worked with. I loved the directors I worked with, and I loved the respect I got, and I loved the crews I worked with. They were awesome. They knew so good.
And so production has changed so drastically from those times, but essentially what a producer does
Same
is
thing.
the same, just maybe it was magnified in a different way. And you were dealing with, back then directors were, not that they're not now, but those directors were kings
Exactly.
of the
Mhm.
industry. And you
Oh
were
yeah.
their producing partner. You
Oh
were the
yeah.
person right next to them. So,
And there were
so
perks that came along with that because there were all
right, of
sorts of great
course.
things, and you commanded respect in the production industry. So I
Exactly.
mean, I still think you do. I think a good producer still does command respect, but like they have to, otherwise they're not that good. But yeah, those budgets were $1 million, and now they're $10,000. But you still
Yeah,
have to do
yeah,
the job.
exactly. You still have to do the job and do it correctly. And since you've seen all that change, do you feel, and I know we already talked about communication being an important aspect of being a producer, do you think there are other things that have changed about, I know you're not out there freelance producing now, but do you think there is any sort of shift in what fundamentally makes a good producer from those big heydays of the bloated budgets to what's happening now? Do you see any sort of shift in what's required out of a producer to be effective these days?
Oh, I definitely think that they have to be more creative in their solutions. They have to know how to make things work on a smaller budget. So, and it could be somebody, a lot of producers I worked with back in the day, as they say, where when there was money, a lot of them never morphed. Christian Kendrick morphed. We know how to morph. We know how to change into something else and go, and you find the crews and everything else, and you find your new space. The ones who couldn't morph aren't in the business anymore. They're selling real estate. But and I'm not saying that as a criticism. It's just that's the reality. They couldn't,
They couldn't work with less.
yeah, you couldn't be a producer, AD, and production manager all at the same time, and because that's what it takes. I think the really good producers now really, still have the same work ethic, really are collaborative, but I think that they have to be more solution driven and know how to be even more creative with technology. And how do you do this? Shooting this on an iPhone and make it look good, and give the quality, things like that. And I think they need to have a lot of tech savvy, or at least a good PA around who's really tech savvy. Yeah. Somebody around that they can sort of pick their brain.
That is all true. And you just gave us a really great idea for tip of the day. Real estate. That's going to be our tip of the day for this episode. Get into real estate.
Yeah, if you
get the hell out
you
of
can't
production.
do multiple things.
Yeah.
If you can't do multiple things for less money. Well, I do know that a lot of the producers that I used to work with are, like you said, they're no longer around because they could not change. They could not do it with less.
Yes.
And you have to do it with so much less these days, less personnel.
Yes.
Less money, less experience
less
from
time.
other people. And less time.
Yeah.
And it's hard to strike that balance between the experience level that you are working with versus your own experience level and not domineering every situation you're in.
Exactly. It's one thing though, I will say this, and I usually don't like to focus on the negative, but I recently was on a set and the line producer, I don't know if they were green or just not a ton of experience, but it was at one point I felt like he/she, I won't even get that detailed, was just not running the job. Do you know what I mean? And that it was getting a director was going a little rogue. And I was like, whoa, 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 somebody's got to rein this person in. Do you know what I mean? And that was sort of, it's funny when you see that confidence level is there that, or is lacking, and that it is not there, and that they just are not a good producer. And it's hard to put your finger on why, but what's happening is not the right thing. So not to be negative.
It's hard not to be negative these days.
It is, and that's what we're trying to do. Is
turn that frown upside down. No.
Turn that frown upside down, kids.
Like, you missed the party that I had last weekend, but there was several of us there that totally, you missed a good one. But we could all go into my basement and talk about the bad experiences we had. What we'd like to do is talk about the good. And so,
yes. Yeah. And how to continue learning and growing and changing as the industry changes.
And so once you get a few of those experience, so here's a question for you. So looking back on that experience that you had with that producer, was there anything different that you could, not that, you would be to blame or anything, but is there anything different that you would have done to communicate differently to help them with their job? That's a convoluted question.
No, but if there was something that I could have helped aid in,
yes,
because that's what I do feel like that's my role, is to be the liaison. I felt like my marketing client was, which when you were on a staff, my job, the marketing department, they're my clients. So I felt my marketing client was not being heard. And that's what the big problem was. And I spoke to my agency producer, and my agency producer went to the line producer. And I don't think where the breakdown was between the line producer and the director. And the director was going, I'm going to keep going and doing what I want, which was not the way to go.
No.
And that line producer
not at all
could not rein in the rogue director. We got great stuff in the end, but we needed to be done within an hour before that. You know what I mean? So could I have changed that situation? No, because it would have been totally out of place for me to say something. because I have
Mhm.
to go through the protocol and the different levels to get there.
Well, I'd have to say, in my expert opinion, I don't know if you agree, Lawrence, or not, but I would chalk that up to green.
Yes, yes.
Inexperienced.
As I said earlier, slightly green. So yeah, exactly.
Yep. As you said, prognosis.
Yeah, green,
Green.
and not green with envy.
So, so now, in what you're doing now, in your position at Verizon, with a vast amount of producing experience and a vast amount of knowledge you have from your career, how do you see yourself as, technically you're in a role where you're supporting your producing partners, your agency partners, your agency producers, executing their needs for their campaigns in today's very challenging media landscape, just as we've talked about with budgets and schedules and all these challenges that we have in the way we have to produce today. How do you see your role as, effectively supporting your partners in this landscape?
Well, it's really funny. We used to do a ton of big work. We still do big jobs, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of what we've been doing in the last 6 months is sort of much smaller scale financially. The budgets are much smaller. They're a quick turnaround. It's a different, instead of an A-list director, it's a B or C-list director. Hopefully no one gets insulted by that, but it gives them the opportunity to get the work, which is great.
Exactly.
So
we all start somewhere.
you have to, exactly. So those jobs I find actually are more challenging than the larger ones, which we've set up protocol in place already. Like, listen, we're doing this every other month. This is what we're going to do. Let's set up a way to make it easy for everybody. There's a lot of hand holding. There's a lot of hand holding with the agency producer, with communication, saying, we haven't gotten this information back. Can you help me get this information? A lot of conversation with the stakeholders to make sure that they're aware that that this job is so small that we need to make this happen right away. And to the point of, like, should we hire a script supervisor for $650? Yes, you should. Yes, you should hire that person. It really, it's coming down to the nickel and dimes, where the bigger jobs are like, okay, the money's so tight and the time is so tight. There's a lot of conversation and there are a lot of questions. That's where I see my role is really answering those questions and letting them know that it's going to be okay, and managing their expectations of what the production is going to be like. The footage will be good, but it's going to be a little bit different than if you go to an A-list director or one of our other shoots. This is down and dirty and quick,
Right.
and Verizon is not a down and dirty and quick company.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to watch how that's happening, because there's so much content being produced.
I do feel that I would say, just about every job I've had in the last 3 years, if I had an additional $8,000 to $15,000, which is nothing when you think about somebody's marketing budget.
Oh, I know.
$8,000 to $15,000, that the job would have gone seamless.
Yeah.
Instead of late nights of continual discussing, like you said, of like how to work out a problem.
And you know what, I think that it's sort of my job to say to people, and I do, listen, you got to spend this, and it's also my job to say to the agencies, you're saying this amount of money, they're not going to be able to swallow that. They'll be able to swallow this number, and you can still do it for that job. It's $4,000 less, but that's where my liaison role is. It's like, you want this to get signed off tonight? Make it this.
I love that. Should every counterpart at the client be as savvy as you are?
Yeah. Can you come with me when I buy my next car, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
So,
I'm also called Gangster Barbie, because I come across as so sweet and with a ponytail, blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden it's like,
Gangster Barbie, I love it.
Yeah.
So, tell us the best experience you've had with a producer ever.
Any kind of producer, line producer, agency producer.
Span your career.
I think it would be Marlene Kowalik. And I have to tell you, and I know this is going to sound really bizarre, we were on this crazy, huge job, and we were down in Florida, and the company was nuts and everything. And Marlene always was so calm, cool, and collected. She never got rattled. She was like, it's all good, things like that. But I remember on that job, she's like, will you do this? And I was the production supervisor. And she's like, will you do this job with me? It's going to be nuts. Like, with you, of course, I'll go anywhere. We went to Florida, and it is a nutty job. And we're in our production suite, in the hotel in Coconut Grove. And all I could see was, we were like in this mall sort of, but across the way from, you could see from our windows, was this restaurant that just everyone's having fun and drinking beers and eating burgers, and it's loud and fun. And I was like, what is that place? And she's like, it's Hooters, Emily. I'm like, we have to go there. I'm like, I really want to go there because you're working really hard and you're stuck in this hotel suite. And I remember she's like nobody will go with me. Will you go with me to Hooters? And so the two of us went to Hooters. And I think that we brought like the agency producer or the director or somebody with us. It was the best time ever because we needed to let our hair down and have fun, and have some beers. And like the girls who were our waitresses were super nice. It's not like everybody was judging us. And like, why are you women in here? But I was like, I just need to be in that bar. Everybody's having fun. I need to be there. It's Hooters. Okay. I don't care. Isn't it funny? That's one of my favorite memories.
No, I think it's when you have a team that's together that's close enough to be able to do something, you needed to do it and you went out and did it. I can tell you plenty of times Christian and I did something similar. But just the trust that you would have in like a partner, because I always look at when I hire a production manager as my partner.
Yes.
Because they do equally as hard work as I've done their job, so I know what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you guys were partners, and I think that's part of what makes a really good producer in my mind.
Well, and it's like when you stepped in for me when Scott got sick, and you and Christian stepped right up there and you took over for me without thinking, and that's what friendship is. And that's, those are the friendships that you have in this business, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And loyalty.
Friendships, and there's a certain magic between, people like us in the industry when you connect with somebody and you feel connected to them on a business level, but also a friendship level. And there's something magic in that.
Exactly. My friendships are invaluable to me.
I think that we gravitate towards the same like-minded people too in the industry. Like our circle is very much like this as well.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Agreed.
So I feel like, yeah.
Well, maybe in a nice little blurb, like if you were teaching somebody, this is our sum up. What do you believe it takes for someone to be an effective producer in today's media landscape? Now, you've kind of already answered that throughout all of your answers kind of touched on that. But if you had to sum it up in a short little concise, blurb, what would it be?
I think that in today's landscape, to be a good producer, you have to have your skill set needs to include not only technical knowledge, the ability to pivot quickly, but also a person who's compassion and looks beyond that moment, that is in control and gets that this is a commercial or this is a piece of content and it's not brain surgery, and respect the people that you work with. When you do all of those things and you communicate, you'll be a great producer.
Very well said.
Very well said.
Very well said. You're bringing Christian to tears.
Well, yeah. It's important to me to always be respectful.
Oh, totally.
And also to learn as much as I can and to never make anybody feel bad for not knowing something because, we've all been there by producers.
Yeah.
So to make sure that you are supportive, as you said, and communicative, those are really important skills. Not everyone
really
has them.
Important. No, it's really important.
Emily, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Hey, thanks for chatting with me and giving me this opportunity.
No, you were a fantastic guest.
Yes, we really appreciate your insight. And it's a unique insight because you've had this great long career and now you're on the client side,
using those skills
in a very different way. And
which sounds
it was
like
great
it's
to hear.
benefiting everybody.
It is.
I knew it would. I knew they would translate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just had to figure out how to translate my skill set, and I did.
There you go.
And somebody
That's what we all
pays
gotta
my
do.
and somebody pays my insurance. It's awesome.
Sign me up.
That's the real goal.
Emily, thank you so much.
Thank you
Have a great day,
so
guys.
much. All right.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it for this episode, but we want to hear from you.
Yep. Any questions, comments, or any ideas on how to be a better communicator, which makes you a better producer, send us an email.
Hit us up at producershappyhour@gmail.com, or you can find all of our contact info at producershappyhour.com.
And as always, a big shout out to Kyle Pachia, who made our intro, outro music. He is a commercial music composer. And listen to it. It sounds great.
It's awesome. Composed.
Composed.
It's very composed.
And again, Tom Tenney at Radio Free Brooklyn is our engineer today. And the lovely studio space has been provided by them for this episode.
Lawrence, how do people get a hold of you personally?
I am always at indelible-arts.com, or for voiceover, voiceoflawrence.com.
Voiceoflawrence.com is amazing.
Christian, where are you?
I'm at sisterchristianproduces.com.
Great. More guests to come, more drinks to be drunk. What else? What else can we ask for?
Nothing. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Join us next week for another edition of Producers Happy Hour with your hosts, Sister Christian and Lawrence T. Lewis.